Today, on Dark Shadows TV, we will see a macabre story that took place in a location where any of us could be the protagonists. Don't think these stories are far from your life. Let's see what sinister truths the human brain has in store for us today. The Cabin of Death. In 1987, in the forests of California, 4 young people vanished without a trace. But what they found at the place where they were last seen, no one dares to fully recount. What happened in that cabin wasn't just a crime. It was the beginning of something far worse. The story of the disappearance of Rachel Summers, her boyfriend Mike Lewis, and their friends Dave and Sarah was one of the most notorious cases of the 1980s. 4 young people, all in the prime of their lives, went to spend a weekend in a cabin near the dense woods of Trinity County in Northern California. They never returned. But what few know is that months later, the site became the center of a series of disappearances and inexplicable deaths, and the rumors about what happened that night are darker than the official records ever revealed. Rachel Summers was a 22-year-old art student, a vibrant young woman full of life and creativity that impressed everyone who knew her. She was in a relationship with Mike, an athletic and popular guy who had just finished his degree in environmental science. Together with their friends, Dave and Sarah, they decided to take a break from the hustle and bustle of the city and spend a weekend at a cabin Mike had arranged through a friend. The cabin, old and far from any sign of civilization, sat at the edge of the Shasta Trinity National Forest. The trip started with palpable excitement. It was supposed to be a weekend of relaxation, bonfires, hiking, and above all, disconnecting. However, from the moment they set foot on the property, Rachel felt something was off. It wasn't just the isolation, which was already unnerving. It was as if the very air was thick with a heavy, suffocating energy. The cabin was small, with old furniture and a fireplace that barely worked. However, what intrigued them the most was the room in the basement. The door, hidden behind a wardrobe, seemed to have been sealed. Curious, the 4 of them forced it open. Inside the basement, they found something disturbing. There were old black and white photographs pinned to the walls. They were images of people, most of them staring directly at the camera with empty expressions. In the center of the room, a dust-covered table bore what looked like wax marks and dried bloodstains. Dave, the most skeptical of the group, tried to joke about the situation, saying these were probably things left behind by the previous owner. But Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Sarah, always the most sensitive one, started to feel an inexplicable unease, as though she were being watched. That night, the group sat around a bonfire outside the cabin, trying to relax after the unsettling discovery. But as the night wore on, they began to notice strange noises coming from the forest. At first, it was soft whispers, like the wind rustling through the trees. Then, clearer sounds, footsteps. When Mike decided to investigate, what he saw left him frozen. At the edge of the forest, barely visible among the shadows, there were figures. He couldn't see their faces, but they were standing still, watching. He ran back to the group, trying to explain what he had seen, but the others thought it was just his imagination or some local kids playing a prank. Or so they thought. Later that night, things got worse. Rachel woke up with a start at the sound of a door creaking open. When she turned on her flashlight, she realized the basement door was wide open. Her heart pounding, she descended the stairs. In the basement, she found Sarah, standing in front of the photographs, completely still. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" Rachel whispered. But when Sarah turned around, her face was pale, her eyes glazed, and her mouth hung open as if trying to scream. But no sound came out. Behind her, The photos on the wall had changed. They now showed Rachel and her friends in that same cabin, in that same room. But in the photos, they were all dead. Rachel screamed, waking up Mike and Dave, who rushed to the basement. When they arrived, Sarah was collapsed on the floor, unconscious, while Rachel showed them the photos, which now appeared to be just old images again. But Sarah's eyes suddenly flew open, and what came out of her mouth wasn't a human voice, but a high-pitched shriek that echoed throughout the cabin. In the following hours, everything spiraled out of control. The cabin seemed alive. Doors slammed shut, lights flickered, and the sounds in the woods crept closer and closer. The worst came when Dave disappeared in the middle of the night. He went out looking for help, but he never returned. They found his bloody flashlight a few meters from the cabin, with drag marks leading into the woods. The police were notified 2 days later when a group of hikers found Rachel and Mike in shock, wandering along the main road. Sarah and Dave were never found. But the strangest thing was what the investigators discovered in the basement. The same dusty altar and the photographs, now blank, as if the people in them had never existed. Despite efforts to find answers, the case was closed as an unresolved disappearance. But the authorities never disclosed the most disturbing details. The security camera footage from the hospital where Rachel and Mike were taken. In one of the recordings, late at night, Rachel, still in shock, can be seen staring at a wall. Just before the recording cuts out, a figure appears behind her, a shadow resembling the same figures Mike saw in the woods. Mike mysteriously disappeared weeks after being discharged. Rachel was institutionalized in a psychiatric facility where, until her death in 1995, she insisted that they were still watching her from the woods. Even today, some who venture near the old cabin claim to hear whispers in the wind, and those brave enough to enter say the photos in the basement continue to change, showing new faces each time. But no one wants to become part of those images, because what happened in that cabin didn't end with the disappearance of those young people. It was only the beginning. So next time you're looking for a remote getaway, think twice. Sometimes what seems like a peaceful retreat can turn into your worst nightmare. There are places, like that cabin in the woods, that don't just hold secrets. They wait, waiting for you to be the next to cross their threshold. What happened that night is still there, in the dark, lurking for its next victim. The question is, would you dare to enter? I hope to see you more on Dark Shadows TV. The shadows will never leave you indifferent. Follow us for more stories and comment on what tales you'd like to hear next. Every shadow will take form.